I never thought my voice would become my greatest weakness. The day I sang in front of my fiancé Ryder, he stopped me with such force that my heart shattered into pieces. "Morgan, please, you look ridiculous when you sing," he had said, and the microphone I was holding slipped from my trembling hands. We were at a private corporate event, a function hosted by Ryder's boss. I had imagined that maybe my singing could impress Ryder, show him that I was more than just a boring office employee stuck behind a desk all day. I wanted him to see the creative side of me, the part that had dreams beyond spreadsheets and quarterly reports. But when I moved closer to the stage, gathering what little courage I had left, Ryder grabbed my hand and pulled me back forcefully. "Don't embarrass me, Morgan," he whispered, his voice low but dripping with bitterness that made my soul tremble. I stood there frozen as people's eyes fixed on me. Some were smiling, perhaps amused by the tension they sensed. Others looked curious, wondering why I was standing so close to the stage but not moving. I lowered my gaze, unable to meet anyone's eyes. My throat felt tight, words refusing to form. Maybe he was right, I thought to myself. Maybe my voice really was so terrible that I would only humiliate myself and everyone around me. Suddenly, a man stepped onto the stage. Tall with sharp, defined features and dark hair, styled perfectly. He was the event's host, Kael. I had heard his name mentioned during the opening announcements. He picked up the microphone and addressed the crowd with confidence. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're going to do something special. If anyone has the courage to come up here and share their voice with us, please step forward. Let's make this evening truly memorable." My heart pounded hard against my ribs. Maybe this was my chance to prove something, to show that I wasn't just the person everyone thought I was. But Ryder squeezed my hand tightly. "A clear warning. Don't even think about it," he said through clenched teeth, anger evident in his eyes. Then Kael's gaze fell directly on me. He stopped moving, became completely still as if he had seen a ghost. For several seconds he simply stared, and I felt exposed under his intense scrutiny. Then he raised his hand and pointed straight at me. "You, the guy in the back wearing the blue shirt, come up here please." I had no choice. The entire hall was now looking at me, waiting. Ryder released my hand, but the fury in his eyes was unmistakable, burning into me with silent threats. I walked toward the stage, each step feeling like I was dragging weights chained to my ankles. When I finally reached the stage, Kael looked at me with an odd smile, as if he recognized me from somewhere distant and half forgotten. "What's your name?" he asked softly, his voice somehow cutting through all the noise in my head. "Morgan," I managed to say, my voice barely audible even to myself. "Morgan," he repeated as if tasting the name, savoring it. Then he handed me the microphone. "Sing for me." I gripped the microphone, my hand shaking so badly I worried everyone could see. But then, slowly, I let my voice emerge. It was an old ballad, one I had known since childhood, a song my mother used to sing to me before bed. As the words left my mouth, I forgot about the audience, forgot about Ryder standing somewhere in the back radiating disapproval. There was only Kael who watched me as if I were some lost treasure he had finally discovered after years of searching. When the song ended, the hall fell completely silent. Then suddenly applause erupted, filling the space with sound. And then Kael spoke, just one sentence, but delivered with such raw emotion that my breath caught in my throat. "I've been searching for you for 7 years." The words hung in the air, impossible and profound. 7 years? What could he possibly mean? I stood there on stage, completely bewildered, my mind racing to understand what connection this stranger could have to me. The applause continued around us, but I barely heard it. All I could focus on was Kael's face, the intensity in his eyes, the way he looked at me as if I held answers to questions he had been asking for nearly a decade. Before I could process what was happening or ask him what he meant, Ryder was suddenly beside me on the stage. He didn't say anything, just placed his hand on my lower back with enough pressure to guide me away. To the audience it probably looked like a protective gesture from my fiancé, but I could feel the tension in his grip, the barely contained anger radiating from him. As we descended the stage steps, I glanced back once. Kael was still standing there watching me leave, and something in his expression looked almost like loss. Like he had finally found something precious only to watch it slip away again. The moment our eyes met across the distance, I felt something shift inside me, though I couldn't name what it was. Ryder led me through the crowd, not stopping even as people tried to congratulate me or comment on my performance. I heard fragments of conversation as we passed. That voice was incredible. Who was that guy? I've never heard anything like it. Each positive comment seemed to make Ryder walk faster, his jaw clenched tighter. We finally reached a quiet corridor away from the main event hall. The sounds of the party became muffled through the walls. Ryder released me and turned to face me, his expression thunderous. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear my own breathing, fast and shallow, could feel my heart still racing from the performance and from whatever had just happened with Kael. The fluorescent lights in the corridor were harsh and unflattering. They cast sharp shadows across Ryder's face, making him look harder, more angular than usual. I waited for him to speak, knowing that whatever came next would not be pleasant. The distance between us felt vast suddenly, even though we were standing only a few feet apart. This was supposed to be my moment of triumph, the moment I proved I could be more than what everyone expected. Instead, I felt smaller than ever, waiting for judgment. The silence between us lasted only seconds, but it felt eternal. Then Ryder exploded. "What the hell was that, Morgan?" he demanded, pushing me slightly against the wall. Not hard enough to hurt, but enough to make his point. He called me up. The host called me specifically. I couldn't just ignore him in front of everyone. I started to explain, but my words felt inadequate. Couldn't ignore him? Ryder's voice rose dangerously. "I explicitly told you not to make a scene. I told you not to sing. Do you have any idea how this looks? My fiancé getting up on stage at my boss's event acting like some aspiring performer desperate for attention?" The audience clapped. They seemed to actually enjoy it. I said weakly, trying to defend myself. "They were being polite, Morgan. That's what people do at these events. They're not going to boo you off the stage." He ran his hand through his hair in frustration. "And that host Kael, whatever his name is, he was clearly just trying to create some entertainment. You fell right into it like some naive kid." His words cut deeper than I expected. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had misread the entire situation. Let my desperate need for validation cloud my judgment. "I thought maybe you'd be proud of me for once," I whispered. "Proud?" Ryder let out a harsh laugh. "You want me to be proud that you embarrassed both of us? That you showed everyone that my fiancé has delusions about being a singer? I work with these people, Morgan. I have to face them every single day. Do you understand what position you've put me in?" Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression changed, became more controlled. "I need to take this, it's my boss. Probably calling to ask what that spectacle was about." He answered the call and walked away from me, his voice shifting to a professional tone as he greeted his employer. I stood alone in that corridor, feeling the weight of his words crushing down on me. My hands were still shaking, though now it was from emotional turmoil rather than stage fright. Had I really been that terrible? Were all those people just being polite? But I remembered Kael's face, the genuine emotion in his voice when he said he'd been searching for me. That hadn't seemed like politeness or entertainment. "You okay?" A voice came from behind me, gentle and concerned. I turned to find Kael standing there. He must have followed us from the main hall. Up close I could see more details about him. The slight stubble on his jaw, the concern creasing his forehead, the way his dark eyes seemed to look right through my defenses. "I'm fine," I lied. But my voice betrayed me, coming out shaky and unconvincing. He stepped closer, studying my face. "No, you're not. Look, I don't know what that man said to you, but I need you to understand something. What you did up there, that wasn't embarrassing. That was extraordinary. You don't have to say that just to make me feel better." I tried to smile but failed. "I'm not." His voice was firm, certain. "I meant every word I said on that stage. I really have been searching for you for 7 years. Do you remember anything from back then? You would have been in college, probably first year." I thought back, trying to piece together memories from that time. "I was in college 7 years ago, yes. First year, but I don't remember much. It was a difficult time for me." Kael's expression softened. "There was a college music festival. I was there as a photography intern, just starting out, trying to build my portfolio. They had an open mic segment, and you performed. Just one song. I was taking pictures, but I stopped when I heard your voice. I've never forgotten it. Slowly a vague memory surfaced. There had been a festival, and someone had convinced me to sign up for the open mic. I had been terrified but had gone through with it anyway. Afterward, people had laughed at my nervousness, made comments about my stage presence. I had been so humiliated that I vowed never to perform publicly again. Shortly after that, I met Ryder, and he reinforced that decision, telling me it was time to grow up and focus on real career prospects. I barely remember that performance, I admitted. I was so nervous, people made fun of me afterward. Then they were idiots who couldn't recognize real talent. Kael's voice carried an edge of anger on my behalf. Your voice has something rare. It's authentic, emotional, raw in the best possible way. I went into the music industry because of what I heard that day. I kept hoping I'd find you again. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. I felt overwhelmed by his intensity, by the idea that a stranger had carried the memory of my voice for 7 years. 'Cause genuine talent like yours doesn't come along often. I run a music label now, Independent Productions. We focus on artists who have something real to say, who aren't just trying to fit into whatever's popular. He pulled out a business card and pressed it into my hand. I want to work with you, help you record, get your music out there to people who will actually appreciate it. I stared at the card, his name embossed on thick paper. Kael Morrison, Echo Collective Music. I don't know what to say. This is all so sudden. You don't have to decide right now, just think about it. But Morgan, please don't let anyone convince you that your voice doesn't matter. Don't let anyone diminish what you have. He held my gaze for a moment longer, and I saw something there beyond professional interest. It was personal for him somehow, this search, this offer. Then he walked away, leaving me alone with his card and a head full of questions. I looked down at the card, running my thumb over the embossed letters. For the first time in years, I felt a tiny spark of something I had thought was dead. Maybe, just maybe, I could be something more than what everyone told me I was allowed to be. For the next 2 days, I kept Kael's business card hidden in my wallet. I would take it out when I was alone, staring at it as if the paper itself held magical properties. Each time I looked at it, I felt that same flutter of possibility mixed with crushing doubt. In front of Ryder, I acted completely normal, going through our usual routines as if nothing had changed. But internally, something fundamental had shifted. When Ryder made his usual dismissive comments about my appearance, my career choices, or my interests, they didn't penetrate as deeply as they once had. I found myself observing our relationship from a slight distance, seeing patterns I had been too close to notice before. One evening we sat at our dining table for dinner. The television played in the background, some news program neither of us was really watching. Ryder scrolled through work emails on his phone, barely acknowledging the food I had prepared. I watched him for a moment, this man I was supposed to marry, and realized I couldn't remember the last time we'd had a real conversation, one where he looked at me instead of a screen. Ryder, I said carefully, keeping my tone casual, do you think I should try pursuing music more seriously? He didn't even glance up from his phone. Not this again, Morgan. I thought we had moved past this phase of yours. It's not a phase. Someone offered me an opportunity. A legitimate music label wants to work with me. Morgan. Now he put his phone down and fixed me with a look of disappointment. You have a stable job as an accountant. You have responsibilities, bills to pay, a mortgage to think about. What exactly do you think will happen if you start chasing some fantasy about being a musician? Do you imagine you'll become famous? That you'll suddenly have a career performing? My hands clenched into fists beneath the table. It's not about fame, it's about creating something meaningful, doing work that actually fulfills me instead of just existing day to day. It's impractical. He picked up his fork and went back to eating, the conversation clearly over in his mind. I'm not going to support this foolishness. We've been over this before. You need to be realistic about your limitations. Do you understand me? He stood up and carried his plate to the living room, turning up the television volume. I sat at the table alone, staring at my half-eaten dinner. His words should have discouraged me completely. A year ago they would have, but now that small voice inside me that had awakened 2 days ago grew slightly louder, suggesting that maybe Ryder was wrong. That night, after Ryder fell asleep, I lay awake in the darkness of our bedroom. His breathing was steady beside me, but I had never felt more separate from him. Carefully, I reached for my phone on the nightstand and pulled up a new message. My hands trembled slightly as I typed, "I want to meet you. Can we discuss the offer more?" I sent it to the number on Kael's card before I could overthink and delete it. Morning came and Ryder left early for work without saying goodbye. I checked my phone and found Kael's response. "Of course. Tomorrow evening? There's a cafe near my studio. I'll send you the address." The next day dragged endlessly. I sat at my desk at the accounting firm, staring at spreadsheets without really seeing them. My supervisor asked if I was feeling well, noting my distraction. I assured her I was fine, just tired. But internally I was counting down hours until evening, simultaneously eager and terrified for the meeting with Kael. I told Ryder I was having dinner with a colleague from work to discuss a project. He seemed suspicious, his eyes narrowing slightly, but he didn't question me further. Maybe he sensed that asking too many questions might reveal answers he didn't want to hear. The cafe Kael had chosen was in a quieter part of the city, away from the corporate district where I worked. It had exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, and the smell of fresh coffee. When I arrived, Kael was already there, sitting by a window with his laptop open and a black coffee steaming beside him. He looked up when I entered and his face brightened with a genuine smile that made me realize how rarely I saw that kind of authentic warmth. "You came," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I wasn't entirely sure you would." I sat down, gripping my bag nervously. "I need to understand more about what you're offering. How would this actually work? What would you expect from me?" Kael closed his laptop and gave me his full attention, something that felt foreign and valuable. "I run an independent label called Echo Collective. We focus on giving platforms to raw talent without the commercial pressures of mainstream labels. Your voice has a quality that's increasingly rare. It's pure, emotional, unfiltered. What I'm proposing is studio time for you to record tracks, experiment with your sound, find what feels authentic to you. I handle the production, distribution, marketing, all the business side. You focus purely on the creative work. And if it doesn't work? If no one wants to listen?" I voiced my deepest fear. "Then you walk away. No financial obligation, no strings attached." "But Morgan, I've worked with dozens of artists over the years. I know when someone has what it takes, and you do. Your voice is special. Trust me on this." I studied his face, looking for any sign of deception or ulterior motives. But all I saw was sincerity and a passion for music that reminded me of feelings I had buried long ago. "When would we start?" I heard myself ask, surprised by my own decisiveness. "Right now, if you're available. The studio is just a few blocks from here." We walked through the city streets as the sun began to set, painting everything in golden light. Kael talked about his vision for Echo Collective, about artists he had worked with, about his belief that music should come from genuine emotion rather than calculated commercial appeal. I found myself opening up in return, telling him about my childhood love of singing, about how I had slowly been convinced to give it up, about how singing at the event 2 days ago had awakened something I thought was dead. The recording studio was smaller than I expected but felt intimate and creative. Posters of various indie artists covered the walls, and equipment I didn't recognize filled the space. Kael led me to a recording booth and handed me headphones. "I'm going to play a simple melody. Just close your eyes and let yourself feel it. Don't worry about technique or sounding perfect. I want to hear you, the real you, not some polished version." His voice came through the headphones, warm and encouraging. I closed my eyes as the music started. For a moment I hesitated, all my years of self-doubt trying to paralyze me. But then I thought about Ryder's dismissive words, about all the years I had made myself smaller to fit into someone else's vision of who I should be. And I let go. I sang, pouring out emotions I hadn't even known I was carrying. Loneliness, frustration, hope, longing, joy. The words came from somewhere deep inside, and I surrendered to them completely. When I finished, silence filled the booth. Then Kael came in, his eyes bright with excitement. "That was perfect. Better than perfect. That was exactly what I knew you could do." My heart raced, but this time from happiness rather than fear. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. Ryder's name flashed on the screen. Reality intruding on this fragile new possibility. I silenced the phone without answering, and Kael noticed but said nothing, just nodded with understanding, and I knew this was only the beginning of something that would change everything. Over the following week I found myself living a double life. Every night after work I would head to Kael's studio, feeding Ryder various excuses, late meetings that ran overtime, dinner obligations with colleagues, unexpected traffic that kept me out past reasonable hours. I tried to maintain the appearance of normalcy, leaving for the office each morning at the same time, coming home each evening with the same tired expression. But the pattern was becoming noticeable, leaving around 8 in the evening and returning past midnight exhausted but somehow more alive than I had felt in years, was creating cracks in my carefully constructed facade. One morning at breakfast, Ryder didn't even wait for me to sit down before launching his interrogation. "Where were you last night? And the night before that?" He didn't look up from buttering his toast, but his voice carried an edge that made my stomach clench. "Out with a friend. We had dinner and stayed talking over coffee longer than I expected," I said, the lie prepared and practiced. He looked up then, his eyes boring into mine with suspicious intensity. "Which friend? Give me a name." "Someone from the office. You wouldn't know him." I focused on pouring my coffee, avoiding his gaze. "Stop lying to me, Morgan." His voice dropped to a dangerous quietness that was somehow worse than shouting. My heart hammered against my ribs. I held my ground, meeting his eyes with false confidence. "I'm not lying. Why would I need to?" Ryder's hand slammed down on the table hard enough to make the plates jump and coffee slosh over the rim of my cup. "That's exactly what I want to know. Why would you need to? If you're telling the truth, why are you acting so defensive about simple questions?" I remained silent because what could I say? If I told him the truth, he would forbid me from going to the studio, would crush this fragile new dream before it could fully form. Anger was building inside me too, but I struggled to contain it, swallowing down all the things I wanted to say. "Fine. Keep your secrets." He stood abruptly, grabbing his briefcase. "But don't think I'm blind, Morgan." The door slammed behind him with enough force to rattle the windows. I sat alone at the table, guilt and frustration warring inside me. Was I wrong to hide this from him? Perhaps honesty would have been better, but I knew with certainty that honesty would have resulted in ultimatums and restrictions. If I had told him the truth, he would have taken away this one thing that was making me feel like myself again. At the studio that afternoon, Kael noticed immediately that something was off. We had been recording for over an hour, but I kept missing cues, forgetting lyrics, my timing consistently wrong. Finally, he stopped the track and came into the booth. "Morgan, let's take a break." His voice through the intercom was gentle, concerned. He handed me a bottle of water. "Talk to me. What's happening? You're usually so focused, so present." "It's nothing serious. Just some tension at home." I took a long drink, using the moment to compose myself. Kael pulled a chair close and sat down, giving me his complete attention in a way that felt both comforting and unsettling. "Your fiancé?" I looked at him in surprise. "How did you figure that out?" "The ring on your left hand was my first clue." He gestured toward my hand with a slight smile. "Also, you always go completely quiet when your phone rings around 9 in the evening. The pattern isn't hard to notice." I glanced down at the silver band Ryder had given me 2 years ago when he proposed. Back then it had felt like a promise of a beautiful future. Now it felt like a weight, a chain keeping me tethered to someone else's vision of who I should be. "He doesn't approve of this, does he?" "Your music?" Kael's question wasn't really a question at all. He already knew the answer. "No. He thinks I'm wasting time, being impractical, chasing fantasies that will never materialize." The admission felt both heavy and relieving. Finally speaking these truths aloud to someone who might understand. Kael was quiet for several moments, carefully considering his words before speaking. "Morgan, you need to be happy. Life is too short to spend it making yourself smaller to fit into someone else's expectations. If your partner doesn't support your happiness, if they actively work to diminish your dreams instead of helping them grow, then maybe they're not the right partner for your journey." His words struck something deep inside me, a truth I had been avoiding for far too long. I looked at him properly then, really seeing him, and recognized something in his eyes, beyond professional interest or casual friendship. There was genuine care there, a depth of feeling that was entirely personal. Why are you investing so much in me, Kael? I asked directly, needing to understand. You're putting time, resources, emotional energy into my music and my growth. What makes you care this much? Kael hesitated, and I could see him wrestling with whether to share something vulnerable. Finally, he spoke. That performance 7 years ago when I first heard you sing, it fundamentally changed something in my understanding of music and art. I was just starting out in the industry, completely uncertain about my direction, questioning whether I had made the right career choice. But your performance showed me what authentic art looks like, completely raw, brutally honest, emotionally naked. I built my entire career around that revelation, hoping that someday our paths would cross again. I know it sounds unreasonable, maybe even obsessive. My breath caught in my throat. 7 years. He had carried the memory of my voice for 7 years, let it shape his entire professional trajectory. You don't need to respond to that. He stood, clearly trying to lighten the moment, restore professional distance. I just want you to share your voice with the world without fear, without someone constantly telling you that you're not good enough. That's truly all I want. But I reached out and caught his hand before he could step away, acting on impulse. Thank you, Kael. Genuinely. I don't believe anyone has ever believed in me the way you do. He looked down at me, and for several heartbeats, our eyes locked and something unspoken passed between us. A recognition of feelings that went beyond professional collaboration or simple friendship. Then he gently withdrew his hand, maintaining the appropriate boundaries. Come on, let's finish recording this track. I think you're ready to tackle the emotional bridge section now. It's the hardest part, but I know you can handle it. But that moment lingered in my mind throughout the entire session, replaying again and again. And I knew with growing certainty that my relationship with Ryder was approaching its inevitable end, that questions were rising in my heart that I could no longer ignore or suppress. The life I had been living was no longer sustainable, and choices would have to be made soon, whether I felt ready for them or not. 2 days later, everything exploded. I was in the bathroom getting ready for bed when I heard Ryder's voice from the bedroom, sharp and accusatory. When I emerged with my towel, I found him standing there holding my phone, the screen illuminated with my messages. Who is Kael? And what does this mean? Can't wait for tonight's session. His voice was ice cold, each word precisely enunciated in a way that was somehow more frightening than yelling. My heart sank, but I was exhausted from hiding. Tired of the constant deception. He's a music producer. I've been working with him, recording tracks at his studio. Ryder's face flushed deep red, anger visibly rising. Working with him? Recording? You've been sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face, and you didn't think I deserved to know? What the hell, Morgan? I tried to tell you I wanted to pursue music. You shot me down without even considering it. I shouted back, my own frustration finally breaking through. Weeks of suppressed feelings came flooding out all at once. Because it's a ridiculous idea, Morgan. Ryder threw my phone onto the table where it landed with a sharp crack, the screen splintering. You're a wannabe singer who will never make it. And this Kael? He's obviously just using you. Can't you see that? Open your damn eyes. Using me? He's helping me. He actually sees value in what I can do. The words tore out of me. Value? Ryder laughed. A bitter, ugly sound. He wants to get you into his bed, Morgan. Are you really that naive? I researched him online. This underground label of his is shady. He manipulates young, vulnerable artists, gets close to them, and then— Shut up. Tears burned in my eyes. You're just jealous because for the first time in my life someone genuinely values my talent. Someone sees potential in me instead of constantly tearing me down. Ryder grabbed my collar, shoving me back against the wall hard enough to knock the breath from my lungs. I value you. I provide everything for you, Morgan. This apartment, financial stability, a secure future. And this is how you repay me? I grabbed his wrist and forcefully removed his hand from my shirt, physically resisting him for the first time in our relationship. No, Ryder, you control me. You dismiss my dreams. You make me feel worthless and small. That's not value, that's manipulation and emotional abuse. For the first time, Ryder fell completely silent, shocked that I had fought back, that I had named what he was doing. I'm leaving. I grabbed my jacket from the chair, If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. Ryder threatened, his last attempt at control. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw clearly what I had been trying to ignore. Maybe I won't come back. Maybe that would be better for both of us. I left the apartment and walked out into the night. Rain was falling heavily, soaking through my clothes within minutes. But I barely noticed. The buses weren't running properly due to the weather, and I couldn't find a taxi. I walked half the distance to Kael's studio, rain mixing with tears on my face, emotionally and physically exhausted. When I finally arrived, Kael was outside the studio building, locking up for the night. The moment he saw me, concern flooded his features. "Morgan, what happened to you? You're completely soaked." He immediately took off his jacket and draped it around my shaking shoulders. "Can I stay here tonight? I don't have anywhere else I can go right now." My voice broke, and I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. Kael didn't waste a single second on questions. He simply placed his hand on my shoulder and guided me inside, turning the lights back on. He handed me a towel and some of his spare clothes from a locker. "The changing room is through that door. Take your time. I'll make us some coffee." When I emerged wearing dry clothes, feeling marginally better physically though still emotionally raw, he had coffee ready and was sitting on the studio couch, deliberately giving me space to decide how close I wanted to be. "You don't have to explain anything if you don't want to," he said, offering me the steaming cup. But I needed to talk, needed to release everything I had been holding inside. I told him everything: Ryder's controlling behavior, how he constantly belittled me, today's confrontation, the accusations he had made. All of it came pouring out in a flood of words I couldn't contain. Kael listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding with understanding, his presence solid and grounding. When I finally ran out of words, emotionally drained, he spoke with quiet firmness. "You deserve so much better than someone who makes you feel inadequate, Morgan." "Do I really?" I stared into my coffee cup as doubt crept back in. Maybe he's right about me. Maybe I'm being unrealistic. Maybe I'm just— "Stop right there." Kael reached over and took my hand, his grip gentle but anchoring. "You're talented. You deserve someone who supports you, who lifts you up, who doesn't constantly push you down. What he's doing isn't love. It's control disguised as concern." His touch felt warm and safe, grounding me when I felt like I might float away. His eyes held only honesty, no hidden agendas or manipulation. In that moment I realized with startling clarity that I wasn't attached to Ryder anymore. My feelings had shifted to Kael, to this man who had believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. It was dangerous, complicated, messy, but it was the truth, and I couldn't deny it any longer. "Stay here tonight. There's a guest room upstairs," Kael offered respectfully, not making assumptions. "You can think about everything tomorrow. Right now, just rest and take care of yourself." I nodded, grateful beyond words. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully, free from Ryder's constant criticism and control, even if just for a few hours. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight I could simply breathe and exist without judgment. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and toast. Kael had already prepared a simple breakfast. Nothing elaborate, just eggs and bread. But it felt like luxury because it came without expectations or conditions. We ate in comfortable silence, and I was struck by how natural it felt. How easy it was to simply exist in his presence, without performing or defending myself. After breakfast, I finally gathered the courage to pick up my phone. My hands trembled slightly as I typed out a message to Ryder. "We need to talk. Really talk. Honestly and openly." He didn't reply. The message sat there, delivered but ignored, and I understood that was an answer in itself. I spent the day at the studio with Kael, working on finalizing the recordings we had made over the past weeks. When Ryder's name flashed on my phone screen that afternoon, I declined the call for the first time ever. Kael noticed but said nothing, simply nodded with understanding, respecting my decision without needing explanation. The silence between us had shifted into something comfortable now, easy and natural. He would show me tracks, I would offer feedback, and we worked together with a synchronicity that felt effortless. I found myself recognizing that the patience and understanding Kael showed me was something Ryder had never offered, not once in our entire relationship. One evening after a particularly productive recording session, Kael led me up to the building's rooftop. I come here when I need to clear my head, he explained as we stepped out into the cool night air. Below us, the city lights sparkled like scattered diamonds, and the usual traffic noise was muted by distance. Have you ever imagined what it would feel like if the whole world heard your voice? Kael asked, leaning against the railing and looking out over the cityscape. Honestly, it terrifies me, I admitted, standing beside him. But now, for the first time, I feel like maybe I'm ready for it. I'm finally doing something for myself, not for anyone else's approval. Kael smiled, and I could see genuine pride in his expression. That's exactly the mindset you need, because I'm planning to release your first EP next month. 4 tracks. Your voice needs to be out there in the world. My heart rate accelerated with a mixture of excitement and terror. An EP? Already? But what if people don't like it? What if nobody wants to listen? Then we'll handle that if it happens. But I know they will love it. Trust the process. More importantly, trust yourself and what you've created. Kael turned to face me fully. I looked at him and found he was already watching me, his eyes holding that same intensity I had noticed before, something deep and careful and profound. Kael, I began, but finding the right words felt impossible. You don't need to say anything, he whispered, taking a small step closer while still maintaining respectful distance. But this time I needed to speak, needed to be completely honest for once in my life. I think I'm falling in love with you. I know my situation is complicated. Technically I'm still engaged, but I can't keep lying about what I'm feeling. You've shown me what it actually means to be valued and supported. Kael went very still, his breath visible in the cool night air. Morgan, are you absolutely certain about this? I don't want you to feel pressured or confused because I've been kind to you. I'm certain, I interrupted, surprised by the confidence in my own voice. For the first time in years, I'm completely certain about something I feel. Kael slowly raised his hand and touched my cheek, the contact feather-light and tentative. This isn't complicated for me. It hasn't been complicated since the moment I found you again after all these years. Then he kissed me, soft and slow and careful, full of 7 years of waiting and the intensity of the present moment. When we finally pulled apart, I knew with absolute clarity that my life would never be the same, and I was ready for that transformation. The following morning, I made the call I had been avoiding. Taking a deep breath, I said with clear firmness, "We're done, Ryder. I can't continue this relationship anymore." He started yelling immediately, throwing blame and accusations, but I ended the call before he could finish, setting a boundary for the first time in our relationship. I removed the silver band from my finger and placed it carefully in a small box, planning to return it to him when emotions had cooled and we could handle the practical aspects of separating our lives. When I showed the ring to Kael later, explaining that I had taken it off, he said something that surprised me. "Keep that box somewhere you can see it occasionally." "Why would I want a reminder of that relationship?" I asked, confused. "Not as a reminder of him," Kael clarified with a gentle smile. "As a reminder that you chose yourself, that you chose your own happiness and dreams over someone else's control. That's powerful, and you should remember it." The day of my EP release finally arrived. The venue was small and intimate, but it was packed with people who followed Kael's label and trusted his judgment about new artists. As I stepped onto the stage, I felt no fear, no crushing doubt or anxiety, because Kael was in the audience, sitting in the front row, his face radiating pride and support. As I began to sing, I could see genuine appreciation in people's eyes, not judgment or mockery, but real connection to the emotion in my music. And I understood then, with perfect clarity, my voice belonged to me now. I didn't need anyone else's validation or permission to use it. I was finally free, reconnected to my authentic self and my true identity. Kael was with me, not as someone controlling or manipulating me, but as someone who had helped me rediscover the person I had lost along the way. The applause when I finished was thunderous, overwhelming, real. People stood from their seats and I saw some wiping tears from their eyes. This was what Kael had known all along, that my voice had power, that it could move people, that it deserved to be heard. After the show, Kael found me backstage and pulled me into a tight embrace. "You were incredible. Absolutely incredible." "We were incredible," I corrected him. "I couldn't have done any of this without you believing in me first." He pulled back just enough to look at my face. You had it in you all along, Morgan. I just helped you remember that. And standing there, surrounded by the evidence of what I had accomplished, I finally believed him.